Thank you, everybody, for coming out. This is our second event at the kiosk. We'll go down in history. We'll be running the Wikipedia to make sure of that. I'm Chris Barone from the Boston Institute for Nonprofit Journalism, and we are doing programming in here that connects, all sorts of, basically publishing in Cambridge. This rich history of it, but since we are living, breathing reporters and journalists, we love the history stuff. We're history buffs. We helped with all the stuff on the inside, but we wanted to make sure that we're current, right? And there's really, if you're in Cambridge, there's really nothing more current than what's happening and what's been happening for a couple of years now. Metamorphosizing, did I get that right? Why even attempt a word like that? For a couple of years now. And regarding Cambridge Day, also those, and we'll get into the difference of those, but I just want to thank, first of all, everyone who's here, but Mary McGrath, who I think, when we started BINJ 10 years ago this month, we came to see, one of the friendly groups of people at Open Source, and you're the executive producer of is that, you've had many titles there, I understand.
Open Source is the first podcast, still the longest continuing running podcast.
And good people, and also kind of like BINJ, like floaters, right? Like you have a lot of friends. You're kind of like you've done plug-in all over the place. So this, what we're about to talk about, nonprofit, local journalism, of course, it's a little different, but also you're kind of been on the vanguard of a lot of this, kind of flying by the seat of your pants at a pretty high level. But I guess it's not like you're coming from the insurance industry. That's kind of the right. So I guess so thanks for being here. But I wanted you have a really kind of the breakdown. So we're keeping these short. So I think it's great with this dense. Okay. Bring us into it, and then I'm going to pepper you with a couple of questions.
Okay.
We live and breathe this stuff. So
okay. All right.
Thank you very much.
I'm glad to be here. I'm a radio journalist. I'm a journalist from a family of journalists. I do, my day job is producing a podcast. But I got involved in a very exciting project a couple of years ago, and I'm about to give you a short history of it. The short history is that a group of Cambridge residents came together in the last couple of years, united around a concern about the loss of local news here in Cambridge. And it's dire. More than 3,200 newspapers have shut down in the last 20 years. That's more than 2 a week. That's a loss of a third of the country's local and regional papers. 80% of the remaining papers are weeklies. Many, like the once great Cambridge Chronicle, are limited in scope and have, let's say, little quality journalism. At the same time, research has shown what we know, that communities with vibrant local news have higher voting, less polarization, less corruption, and more cohesion. People trust local news more than national news, and they trust it more than social media. So we did our homework, and we studied the ecosystem of local news around the country, and similar to other communities in our situation, it's become an exciting movement around Greater Boston and across the U.S., we decided that a nonprofit paper would serve Cambridge best. We partnered with Mark Levy, the founder of Cambridge Day.
Who's in the house.
Building on what he's done heroically all these years, we want to add people and skills that will enable us to relaunch a bigger and better paper. 2 separate boards, one at Cambridge Day, which I serve on, one called the Local News Fund Board at the Cambridge Community Foundation, which my colleague Mr. Wainwright chairs. We've brought together journalists, donors, startup veterans, people with long-standing connections to the city and its various institutions, and we've started to connect with residents and organizations all over the city. The paper is now a nonprofit, which will allow us to receive grants and tax-deductible donations, and still we can have advertising. This is the weekly version of Cambridge Day. We've made some improvements. The comment section is a moderator now, it's much better. Calendar is searchable. We're accepting paid birth and death notices. We've added some additional freelancers, and we've started home delivery of the weekly print edition for folks who make a donation of $200 or more per year. Don't think of Cambridge Day as a paper that needs subscribers or memberships. Think of it as a community asset, a public good, if you will. We're ambitious. We want to launch a revitalized Cambridge Day with trusted, in-depth, balanced reporting on important issues in Cambridge. We want the paper to be chock full of ads, listings of events and stories about what goes on here, city government, and nonprofits, inside and innovation, business, science, education, about our rich arts and culture, and the leaders and characters that make up the fabric of the city. We also want to give the Little League scores, report on what's going on in high school, celebrate friends and neighbors, and keep track of where they moved and when they moved on. We want to spotlight people and communities in the city we don't hear from, so that the paper reflects all of us. We want to draw on the writers, authors, and artists among us and ask them to be contributors. We want to make a visible, tangible, measurable impact, and we want it to be sustainable. It's a tall order, and we need help. The business model for news is broken. Traditional revenues for journalism have dried up, and the economic insecurity we all find ourselves in now is more of a threat than ever to news outlets. As a new nonprofit in the world of local news, currently with very few resources, we need the support of the entire community. The paper will always be free, online, in print once a week, and in our weekly newsletter, which we hope you'll sign up for using that QR code.
And is there anything you want to add? Oh, sorry.
We're looking for generous philanthropic support, sponsorships, event partnerships, advertising, tips on stories our readers will enjoy. We want to help make life better in Cambridge, and we think we can, with the help of everyone.
Thank you.
Great.
Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to add that one of the things we are really quite earnest about using our talents is to go out to the whole city. And so we are going into neighborhoods, meeting people through houses. I've got a colleague at the BINJ Cafe in Kendall Square right now. Here we are in Cambridge Square. And there are any number, we have 60 different languages spoken at home throughout Cambridge. And many of those people have groups on Facebook and these kinds of things. And we want to expose them and also give them access to our civic and government news, which they may not be using at this stage. I started this along with Mary because it was just, I was hungry for stuff. And I can't say I was hungry for the sports coverage of the kids, but I know an awful lot of people are. And of course, already Mark's got in place a terrific restaurant. So it's a community effort, and please do join it.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to just get back over here.
Thank you so much. So I just wanted to real quick. Obviously this is a region that means a lot to you, and we can talk about it for days, and we're surrounded by some of these. But whether it's the locals or the alternative papers, just give me like a quick picture of the heyday. What did you like? What did you? Great media, surrounded by grabbing papers off the street. A robust local media. What did that look like in Cambridge, in this area?
Well, I'm not. I don't actually know. My father was a printer in about a dozen local papers in Boston. He worked at the Herald, he worked at the Traveler, he worked at the Record, he worked at the Record American, he worked at the Boston Post. I guess for me, in terms of Boston, I would say the heyday for me growing up was when Tom Winship edited the Boston Globe in the late the 70s and into the 80s. That was an incredible paper. In terms of Cambridge, Cambridge Chronicle was a great paper.
We have part of the Phoenix here and also the Real paper during the time of alternative.
But I don't think of those, but they cover Cambridge.
Yeah,
they did.
But I think it's great to always point out that even when we do the big features sometimes, it's that day to day, week to week.
Boston After Dark.
Of course, all found here. We have Boston After Dark. Where?
Right there.
Yeah, right there. So we have.
And that was. I mean, some of the journalists there have gone on to do amazing things.
Yeah.
So we go from abundance to now, which brings me to really my big question, which I told you I was interested in. Is we all love Mark, and he's been at it. But this is something we're not seeing everywhere. That people from the community who want to do something often turn around and don't see the people who have been doing the work on the ground for years. Mark is right here, but whether he was or wasn't, he's tell us about the decision to, look at what were the assets that were already in place and to work with them and to fill the holes already done, as opposed to starting from scratch.
Well, we did a study. We got a grant from the Cambridge Community Foundation, and we did a study. We've written a report that you can access. And we looked at nonprofit news we looked at local news websites sort of all over the country, and we followed some of the trends, and we talked to experts and publishers and editors of those various papers, and it was our recommendation that Cambridge should have a nonprofit paper in order to be able to get grants and tax deductible donations. And we talked to Mark, and we didn't want to start a new paper, and we agreed to work together.
And did the idea for separate boards come out of that study?
Yes, and we have a lot of really incredible resources and expert help.
So Chris, one of the reasons for the separate boards is the notion of big funding separated from editorial. So it's really much more obvious. The other part of the nonprofit is there are two boards and they are community representatives. No big buck. We had also worked with Mark and helped him out a couple of times because he was really doing an amazing hard job at what he could do. But one person doing that without the advantage of donations and with the loss of classified ads as revenue.
So you kind of slid into my big question, which is asked of me all the time. People say, "Oh, Boston, this should be a layup. This should be the easiest thing." I look at Cambridge and say, "This should be a layup. This should be the easiest thing." I don't know. You look to I don't know, but you know, between the brain power, the high level of the literacy, we're sitting in probably one of the most successful newsstands in American history. People like to read, be informed, engage. I could go on and on. We'll get to the challenges, but really, what's it? I guess my question would be, when you are surrounded by all that, you're somebody from your organization speaking to the tech community right now. But it's not that easy. And anyone who's tried to raise money for journalism knows that. So, kind of, what did you think going into it? What have you learned? How to, do you attack, kind of go after one segment at a time?
We hired a fundraising consultant who was recommended to us by some folks who started the paper. Walter Robinson, the North Spotlight team, is very involved in two local papers, one in Plymouth and one in New Bedford. And he recommended a fundraising consultant. He's working with Newton, Brookline, Plymouth, New Bedford, Andover, and these papers are sort of popping up everywhere. I liken it to a movement.
So is Cambridge being kind of, there's so much going on, does that make it a little harder to draw attention to this?
Well, I mean, the point is that he's advising us and giving us kind of expert advice on how you go about raising the kind of money that we want to raise. And he's a little surprised that we haven't sort of surfaced some.
So actually, he also said that our toughest thing is to persuade people you actually have to pay for this. Because even though the subscribing to the Wall Street Journal costs this much money, I will tell you that subscription does not pay for that paper. It really, subscription rates don't do that. And so people didn't realize that the classified ads were supporting their low dollar cover price. And they aren't anymore. So that's sort of shifting the paradigm for citizenry is a little bit one time, really? Oh yeah. And so there is another thing that's happened is,
and of course young people don't want to pay for anything. They don't want to pay for any content, right? And older, more well-heeled people, it is a trick. I mean, everyone is enthusiastic. When you go to these house parties, we were at an event the other night where there was 50 people under the age of 40, little kids running all over the place. And the energy in the room was just incredibly dynamic.
Yeah.
And it's a trick to teach people that it's like the Museum of Fine Arts or something.
Right.
And that it's, as I said, public good that needs the support. We're getting there. I think
we are getting there. And I think that the disappointment in the national, although we're not going to do national, plays into people saying, oh, wait a minute, I am missing something. And it's sort of hard to say to people, if they're missing something, what do you need? But Mark has done such a good start on some of the arts and various things, and I've heard, sports, they want kids' sports, and I think adult sports in the paper.
Always you got to bring it in.
So it was Tim Snyder, the famous democracy activist academic. He told me once that it's a symptom of a declining, diminishing democracy. And he said, if people don't have local news to talk about, that's when we talk about Donald Trump.